about the Sonic community is they manage to make games on the same level as games that are supposedly on a AAA budget. These are Sonic fan games, of course. Today, we're going to be looking at some of these amazing fan games. Well, I'm just going to be taking you through a load of fan games I found. I haven't played any, but I will be talking about positives and negatives that I got from footage. This is the Historical Gamer, and welcome to a Sonic fan game showcased. I have a lot to go through, and I won't be doing it all in this video, so I am going to split this into a 3-part series. Starting with Sonic Overture. This game is like a what if. What if the Sega Saturn got a new 2D classic Sonic game that was a prequel to Sonic 1? Now, from that concept alone, you can already see that this game has a lot of potential, and I'm happy to say that from footage, it seems to mostly fulfill its potential. While it's not the game's main focus, I find the art style very appealing. I also think art style is one of the key things for creating an appealing game, because this art style that I speak of is quite a surreal art style, though it is realistic, but that doesn't really mean it has to make sense. And it's quite good at immersing you into the early 3D era. The game has its gimmicks, but they are not game gimmicks, they are stage gimmicks. They are all creative, and they serve the goal of getting to the goal fast. Like, for example, the Balling Granite Zone, which you can get a lot of speed on by hopping onto, because you can smash through walls and enemies, though you're still at risk because you are not in ball form. The totem poles in Sunrise Gate letting you get a lot of height. On a different note, this game's main thing is that it is a prequel to Sonic 1. So it uses scrapped Sonic 1 concepts, like Sonic being a rabbit. And forget Shadow, forget Metal Sonic, we now have this bunny rabbit. And talking of bunny rabbits, well, he's got a metal version too. The scrapped bunny badnik from Sonic 1. His name is Splat. Also the planets in Marble Zone, and various others, which I really can't name. Most classic Sonic games are built off of physics and momentum, which this game recreates quite well. Not perfectly, but serviceable and great. I say that like it's a simple thing, but really it's quite a feat. And the fact that most fan games get it right is really quite amazing, and more than we can expect from Sega. Looking at you, Sonic 4 Episode 1, the prototype had no momentum. Then they added momentum. Kind of. There is also something that a lot of fan games don't get right, being the balance of speed, exploration, and platforming. Like, for example, in Sunrise Gate Zone, you have a very vertical stage, which allows for exploration along with the breakable walls. You can traverse it using the totem poles, which add an element of platforming. Then the spheres add an element of speed, and again also help you traverse the level. All of its zones that are in the game so far, Granite Zone and Sunrise Gate, are essentially better versions of Green Hill and Marble. Granite Zone is Marble Zone if it wasn't all waiting on slow platforms, which automatically makes it better, and the level design and gimmicks in themselves are actually good, so it's not bland. And Sunrise Gate Zone, it has the aesthetic of the entire game, obviously, but it looks quite a lot like Green Hill Zone. But just that change in the palm trees and using the mountains from the prototype, changing the shape of the clouds, and mostly changing the checkerboard to be diamonds instead of squares makes all the difference in making it stand out from its counterpart. To finish up this section, I'd like to talk about something that makes the game fundamentally more engaging. This especially holds true for repeat playthroughs, as the game only has 2 zones. What I'm talking about is the Chain Link Score Multiplier. You ever played a Mario game? Yes, you probably have. And stomped on some Goombas? Yes, you probably have. And got a 1-up? Yeah, you probably have got a 1-up. From bouncing on the Goombas that's not in Mario Maker? Again, you might have, but if you stomp on enough of them without touching the ground, then you get a 1-up. As you jump on them without touching the ground, the score you get gets progressively bigger. The Chain Link Score Multiplier is just like that, except imagine you're able to touch the ground. Now, that might sound extremely overpowered, but they add a couple more twists into the mix. Instead of not touching the ground, you get a timer. Now, you can't earn lives from this, but you do earn more score, which is good if you're trying to do a score attack, and the funnily satisfying feeling of getting a more colourful and exciting word pop up in the corner of your screen. It's usually bigger as well. The first couple of times when you hit an enemy, it completely refills the gauge, but after the first couple of times, it only gives you a third of the meter back, bringing a good degree of challenge to it. You can also refill it with rings, and I think this rule is very interesting. Item boxes count as 2. Quickly before we end, I'd also like to say that, like in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, as well as Sonic Mania, not just all the zones are unique. That would only mean there's 2 unique aesthetics, and they're not even that unique because they're semi-recycled from Sonic 1. All the acts are unique as well. Now, you saw the first act of Unrise Gate Zone, so you already know what that looks like. But the second act uses the same scrap concepts as at Golden Capital Zone. Next up, we have Sonic and the Fallen Star. This fan game is made by Stardrop, and may be getting a sequel sometime soon with Sonic and the Moon Facility. The first thing you'll notice with this game is the amazing art direction and original soundtrack, which most people say is quite good. And to go along with that, you have some really expressive animation, as well as fully animated cutscenes to show that off. And when characters change poses, it uses a funny pop effect, which I find to be really nice. On the subject of those cutscenes, they portray Sonic and Tails, as well as Dr. Eggman's characters, really well. A couple of examples of Sonic and the Fallen Star's extremely expressive animation are when Sonic runs over water using the Super Peel Out, which he can do in this game. It makes rainbows, which means they are really paying attention to detail there. As well as when he does the drop dash, you can actively see him curl himself into a ball before hitting the ground. To me, this doesn't feel neoclassic. It also doesn't feel retro. It just feels really modern, and at the same time, unlike Sonic Boom, it just feels so Sonic the Hedgehog. To see what I mean, let's look at how it keeps old mechanics really fresh. Example, the elemental shields. The elemental shields were given a little more of their own distinct personality, with the lightning shield being a triangle and the bubble shield now being a square. But this isn't just a visual change, it's actually a change to the abilities. While the bubble shield retains all of its abilities, the fire shield and lightning shield have almost traded places. While their effects of being immune to fire and attracting rings are still there, their secondary abilities have been changed, with the fire shield being reworked to work a lot like the lightning shield, but even closer to the burst wisp, with it giving Sonic a really cool triple jump. And the lightning shield gives you a dash, but that dash is more like a drop dash, but a lot more powerful. Adding to the theme of Sonic and the Fallen Star being extremely streamlined, we have the fact that his backgrounds are all extremely concentrated, packing a lot of detail into a small space, though that doesn't mean they're also clean bit. And if we look at the bosses, as well as mini bosses of each zone, not all of them are creative, but they're all definitely very streamlined, as well as focused, making them extremely fun to fight. And they really do take the approach of the classic bosses, except pump it up to a good difficulty challenge, while not using the Sonic Adventure 2 approach of having a humongous waiting game in between. To be honest, the perfect metaphor for this game is this game's new transformation, Nova Sonic, which is its upgraded version of Super Sonic, very similar to Hypersonic or Supersonic 2. Yeah, I love it. As you probably already saw with Sapphire Sight's zone there, the zones in this game are all new, and a good chunk of them are extremely creative. And if you thought Sapphire Sight's was creative, which you probably might not have, the other zones in the game are a lot more creative. Like being in a river of sweet treats. This game in a lot of aspects is like Sonic 2, including in the fact that it really wants you to go fast. But in doing so, it falls victim to some of the problems seen in Sonic Advance 2. The gameplay can end up feeling a little repetitive, because you can only pull out the trick of, look, it's Sonic going fast, so many times. And with practically all the set pieces just being Sonic going fast in another different way, some otherwise amazing set pieces end up being just mediocre. Now you'd think the stage gimmicks would help with this, but they really don't, because they're very minor as to encourage speed. But as I said, you can only pull out that same speed trick a couple of times. Speed should be integral to Sonic's gameplay, but unless you're Sonic 1, then it can't really be the entire game's gimmick. Now, one saving grace that this game's level design does have is that it does have that bottom and top philosophy. More closer to Sonic 2's two-row philosophy, but it's there. But again, it falls victim to the same problem as Sonic Advance 2 in the fact that sometimes it gets too linear. But even in those linear sequences, there are a lot of secrets to explore for, which keeps the gameplay somewhat engaging at least. Lastly, when there is platforming, which is very rare, which is surprising if you look at how vertical the stages actually are, it ends up feeling quite stop and go, because 1 minute you're running like at the fastest speed ever, then you really do have to slow down for the platforming, because while Sonic Control is good, it's really not as good as the classics. At least when it comes to precision. Oh yeah, the controls! I nearly forgot. They are, when it comes to the momentum physics, they are an almost perfect recreation of the classics, except, as the theme with this game is, faster. But as I just said, when it comes to precision, they're not very good. It's sad to end this one on a sour note, but believe me, it really is a good game. And according to its creator, the worst level in its sequel, Sonic and the Moon Facility, is better than Sonic and the Fallen Star's best level, which is a great sign that he has so much confidence in it. So I really hope that the sequel can fix the issues, and I commend Stardrop for making such an amazing project, even though it does have some obvious flaws. Now, our last fan game for this episode is Project 06, and I've got a lot to gush about for this one. In case you don't know what Project 06 is, it is a ground-up remake of Sonic 06, originally by Chaos X, a person who hasn't even played Sonic 06. So don't think it's made by one person though. It's made by a lot of people as he acquired a team over the years he was making it. It's made in the 2019 version of Unity. Since there's so much to talk about with this one, I'm going to be splitting it up into categories. First of all, the general improvements. Judging by the fact that in the footage you're not clipping through the floor, you can probably tell that it being a ground-up remake, it fixed most of the bugs and glitches. While it did introduce some of its own, they're next to none. Probably have also noted the significantly improved graphics from the Xbox 360 version, and especially the PS3 version. And the best part is, it supports 4K, which makes it look absolutely stunning. It being a ground-up remake, they could also give the game modding support, which is fantastic considering the new and improved physics system, which makes the level design quintessentially more fun. Unlike the actual Sonic 06, it has proper momentum physics, finally giving it the same edge as Sonic Adventure and Sonic Adventure 2. The only thing it's missing is rolling, but apart from that, it's spot on and works amazingly. Adding to the subject of visuals, which I brought up earlier, I'm almost surprised about this, but the game retains its realistic art style, even though many people don't enjoy that, which I think is good and makes it stand out. Now, the QuickTime events in the original game were very action-packed and would be very good, if they actually worked, that is. But now, letting us enjoy the visuals to an even further extent, the QuickTime events actually worked, and they can be played in their intended glory, and I think it's a lot better for it. Also, the levels have become infinitely more replayable due to a variety of things, including the improved physics system. One of which being the ranking system, which is now closer to Sonic Adventure 2, with tailored point requirements for each level. Now, if you're not feeling like playing as one of the main trio, being Sonic, Shadow or Silver, there is always the Amigo characters, which just like the main characters, have been fixed in their entirety. Another W for the Amigo characters is that they now have more sections. As well as in the case of Blaze, Omega, Tails and Amy, they get new moves, which is really amazing and bumps the Amigo characters, in my opinion, almost onto the same level as the main characters. If it wasn't for the improvements made to them. But unfortunately, while that really would have been the perfect segue, we've still got a couple more things to discuss before we can move on to Sonic's content. And they really do serve as just the cherry on top. Now this one's for the visual design. They gave the stages weather effects, which in my opinion, that's dope. I like that. But this is Project 06. They always have to do more. For Shadow's aquatic base, as you can see, they added a filter on it because it's in the past. Blaze's Wave Ocean, as you'll see later, it's at sunset. So yeah, that's all for the visual design, but I say that's all, it's amazing. Time for our last thing for general improvement, as well as improved replayability. They added a score multiplier. While this is great for Sonic, as it gives you more incentive to chain things like swing on a pole, straight onto grind rails, and trick all the way till you jump off, so you can go into a homing attack chain, the characters that I find it really has the most merit for are Blaze the Cat, Silver the Hedgehog, and Shadow the Hedgehog. Since Silver and Shadow revolve around combat mostly, and they have very in-depth combat unlike Omega, it really helps them, as while their combat is in-depth, it's not as in-depth as I just said. And Blaze, because of her fire powers, it makes it really easy to chain things, which makes her gameplay a lot more satisfying. Now, after all this time, we are finally on to Sonic's gameplay. Now, not many changes have been made to Sonic's gameplay, because he was already mostly structurally sound, apart from the bugs and glitches. But on the topic of bugs and glitches, Sonic really did have a lot of gimmick sections, like the snowboard and Mach Speed sections. Now, I think you'll be happy to know that they are fixed, just like everything else in Project 06. Though for the Mach Speed sections, surprisingly, they kept the stiff jump. I guess they thought it was just part of the challenge. Now, all of the main characters have been given a new flashy ultimate power as a reward for exploring, Sonic's being Super Sonic. There's not much to say on it, apart from it's a great addition to the game and just another incentive to keep exploring through Project 06. Now, on to Shadow. Now, it's all the same song and dance at this point. Shadow's vehicle sections have been fixed and are now functional. But there is a downside to Shadow's big air quotes improvement. Due to his increased running speed, apart from the hang glider and hovercraft, his vehicles, especially the motorcycle, are practically useless. To combat this, the buggy and the motorcycle have been made mandatory, unlike in the original release. Now you know Shadow's button mashing combat? Well, that's there in all its former glory if it ever had any. But it has been sped up as to be less annoying. Now, in the retail release of Sonic 06, Shadow's Chaos abilities only half worked. Chaos Snap and Chaos Control were fully functional, but Chaos Spear and Chaos Blast weren't. Especially Chaos Blast, which had a humongous boost. Now, instead of barely doing any damage and having a tiny radius, as you can see by what's happening on screen, it's a humongous explosion that destroys everything around it. And if you're still convinced Shadow isn't fast enough, well, Chaos X gave him the Spin Dash, which again, just like everything in this game almost, is a vast improvement to his gameplay. Now, just like the Amigo characters, though we didn't mention it in the general part because we didn't think it'd be appropriate for there, Shadow also got his new routes and levels, often leading to secrets such as item boxes and a whole bunch of rings. Now, to encourage you to go down these new routes, he gets an ultimate power award for exploring, just like Sonic. But for Shadow, it's the ability to take off his inhibitor rings. Now this makes him an absolute beast, but it has a time limit, so it is balanced. In my opinion, this makes his combat better. This, along with Silver's new ultimate power ability, and a very small amount of Supersonic, makes Score Attack actually a viable option in the game. And if I could play the game, I definitely think that I really would enjoy Score Attack with that ability. We are now finally onto Silver. Out of the three main characters, Silver arguably got the biggest upgrade. Mostly because of the new momentum physics. Since he was the slowest character and still is, he gets to take advantage of them now, making his gameplay's pace a lot more bearable. Now, as for Silver's abilities, he now has all of them for the start, and they're all fixed. This allows him to take humongous shortcuts and makes his combat more engaging. And as a reward for exploring all of his new pathways in levels, which all reward you, may I add, you get an ultimate power move for Silver. Except this time, it's the power of Iblis's flames, which is really fitting for Silver. But at the same time not, because he's just usurping the powers of his enemies. And the rest of it has all been said before. But that's really all there is to say on Project 06 from the notes that I had. Apart from the fact that it's a good game. Yeah, I'd like to say that part. Project 06 is a good game, and when it comes to Sonic fan remakes, it should be the icon, the model for what all of them should be like. Though to be fair, it is outstanding, so we still shouldn't expect all fan remakes to be as good as Project 06. Thank you for watching to the end of this extremely long video. If you did enjoy this video and want us to make more like it, then remember to like and if you've liked multiple of my videos, then maybe subscribe. If you have a comment with feedback, then please do put it down below. I'll make sure to read them. Remember, this was the Historical Gamer. Bye.